sector. I'm a big fan of it. I think, Colin, it's an area that needs focused in on in the sector greatly. Colin, could you maybe give a minute or two just background to what the thought process is behind this, what it means? Because I must admit, and it's been about for years, when I first heard fractional exec, I thought, what the hell is that? But it absolutely makes sense once you know. So, Colin, can I ask you please to just give us a minute or two on that?
Yeah, I suppose it kicks off with the simplicity that every organisation needs those skills at the very top of the business to help them achieve their goals, and almost always there's something missing. Always astounded me in social housing around particularly kind of the middle tier, lower tier kind of social housing providers, that the person who was responsible for information and technology was the finance director.
Yeah.
So often. And yet, what training had the finance director had? Does he understand when people start talking to him about technology or her about technology, what that's all about? It's challenging. So, and the regulators also said that if you're making important decisions, you need to have at the top of your organization people that can advise you, that expertise that can ensure you make the right decisions. And if you make the wrong decisions, not only can it be hugely expensive for the organization, both in mistakes, time, resource, customer service, etc., but also it can be very stressful. I don't know about you, but some of the most stressful times I've ever had is where decisions that I've made have proved to be poor. So this has been around for years to a degree. If I look some of the best kind of engagements we've had, it's where we've acted as if you like a virtual director or an interim director for a period of time. But what Fractional Exec is about is trying to reimagine it. We're in a sector at the moment. The world is changing faster than probably ever has before.
Yeah.
And also we seem to have a greater amount of scrutiny right now. People looking at the information we're providing, the services we're providing, and saying, right, I want to ensure that you're doing it right. And when I say scrutiny, I'm talking about for the ombudsman, I'm talking about the regulator, but I'm also talking about ITV News and the media. There are a whole host of people that are just looking at the social housing sector, including a whole load of ambulance chasing lawyers as well, who are rubbing their hands and seeing an opportunity. So we need to ensure that we're addressing this area of skills and decision making correctly. And the other big issue the sector seems to have at the moment is capacity. We have these issues that are hitting us. We need to dedicate resource to it, and in doing so, it's stopping us doing the day job. It's stopping us doing some of the most important things that we should be doing, and we're losing focus on what our purpose is as organizations, and that is to provide social value ultimately. And from a personal perspective, that legacy that you're going to hopefully be proud that you leave behind you at some point in the future. So the fractional exec is just a bit of a change to it, and what we're trying to do with it is trying to find something that really is win-win-win for everybody, for organizations, for individuals, for customers, even for suppliers. And what does that look like, and how could we do it better? And if you can get those things in a manageable, flexible, agile kind of format that allows you to turn it on, turn it off as and when you need it, take as little or as much as you want, then that sounds ideal.
Yeah, one of the things, Colin, sorry to interrupt, but one of the things I think is really critical at the moment is that you and I talk to landlords on a constant basis daily, and we hear that resources hard to come by at the moment, top resource, but any resource, and also the fact that we know, and we have to be truthful about the fact that the social housing sector does not pay professional technicians, management, business analysts, etc., in the tech space, IT space, anywhere near what they can in the private sector, or even other parts of the public sector. And I think that's a real challenge as well. So affordability is one thing, and I think this gives you a scenario where you can get the best of the best that have got great experience that can add a lot of value to your organisation at a fraction of the cost, but also a fraction of the time needed. Sorry, I interrupted you, Colin, there.
No, you're absolutely right, Dave. That word fraction keeps coming up there, whether it be cost or the time aspect of it. There's also, there's another area we're very focused on at the moment, and that's data. And this is a real problem that the sector has. It's not really been pushed too hard to focus on data quality and data integrity in the past, but now there's again almost a forensic view of data quality, and again, those skills don't normally exist within organizations. So, how do you go about building them? Well, the problem with any form of employment is that there is a process you have to go through. Number one, you have to recruit, go and decide what you want, go and find them. Usually you have to pay a fee to go and go to a recruitment company, do a great job, but there's another cost. Then you've got to bring them on board, teach them about all the organization. You've got to give them the training, the support, the holidays, the everything. If they were to get run over by a bus or something like that, then how do you provide the cover for them? So there are a great many reasons why it might be a good idea to give someone else that responsibility than have to take it on yourself. And if you then find that employment doesn't work, you either have to start again, or you may find yourself having to deal with the whole re-engineering of that role. Which can be very costly, time-consuming, and frustrating. So there's lots of reasons why to just have something fractional and flexible.
I can back that. Thanks, and I can back that up with some personal experience where a few years, basically the whole year before COVID first kicked off, I was brought in, I guess, now that I think about it, as a fractional exec with my previous company, DTL. I was asked to go in and be the head of IT systems and CIO role, basically, for Alliance Homes based in Portishead. Now, it was interesting because that point you made there, when I went into that company, there is always, even for somebody that's experienced, perhaps like myself, there was still a learning curve and to get to build in, and that was pretty much 3 days a week I was there. So a fraction of the time. But the difficulty is embedding yourself in. So the smoother you can make that process, the better. I think the challenge, and I'm going to throw a negative against the fractional exec, because I think we can talk about this, and I think we can sit here and talk about all the plus points. One of the difficulties, I think, and I think the way you're approaching it and the way I understand you're approaching it is better, because when I did it, there was a whole period of wastage at the start of that, of trying to get into the culture and trying to get into the buy-in. Now, what I was reporting to the head of, it was Jane, I can think of her role at the time, head of change, head of business change, whatever it was, and that's where the CIO, me, was reporting into. And I did find it quite odd that the role of a company that size wasn't reporting into the chief exec. So there's still some dangers, isn't there, that you're just there to fill a gap, rather than, I think if you're doing it, you have to have the ability, the power to act as a proper member of staff. And throughout that whole year, I never felt once I was treated as a member of staff. I was still being treated as a consultant, even though I was a fractional exec. I was on the management team, basically. I was sitting in those meetings. But you still felt that you were the outsider.
I'd agree with you. I think one of the key aspects of fractional exec has got to be support from the very, very top.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's too easy for you to get siloed and not to receive, for the investment to be wasted. What I would say, though, in countering again the point, very, very valid point you make, is on the flip side, you come in with a wealth of experience from across the whole sector. What's worked, what's not worked, and that wealth of experience brings with it accountability as well. So that means that, let's say you are an executive, chief executive, whatever you may be, and someone turns around to you and says, "Why did you do that?" And you go, "Well, we employed 3C, we employed Dave Loudon, and these are people with a wealth of experience. What more could we have done?"
Exactly.
And so suddenly there is hopefully the benefit, but also the protection associated with dealing with someone from outside. And within the social housing sector, there are some fantastic success stories. Some of them best kept secrets.
I know.
Don't ask me why. Yeah. And yet, if these can be applied, and this is where I come back to the reimagining it, Dave. I mean, we've not talked about this in any great detail, but where I am at the moment is, can this be made more outcome based? So when we've talked about outcomes in the past, it's by the end of this, we'll have a report for you or a strategy or something like that. What if it goes to the next level? Let's go, right, you've currently got 40% of customer engagement online. What if we can get you to 60%? And we will put, over a period of time, a commitment to achieving that, maybe even performance based. So, you'll pay us this if we do.
Yeah.
We'll pay us that if we really achieve it.
No, I do like that. And
it shares the risk.
Yeah. And the thing that's really good about that is I felt that when I was brought in my example to drive change and to help with new systems implementations, etc., but it became quite apparent that sometimes that was looked upon as, that's too much, Dave, that's too much. Now, if we had agreed beforehand that by 6 months and a year's time or whatever, there was going to be certain outputs, it would have been a different ball game altogether. And I think that the trap for a fractional exec is not to get into the position where you're just filling a gap because somebody else had left and they need a new CIO. I think the fractional exec is better placed when they've got a strategy to implement, to change, to bring in a new digital strategy, to sort out the data, like you said. And, and they can do the day-to-day management stuff, they can drive the change, but at the same time, if there's 3, perhaps even 1, 2, 3 simple goals, that if it's a contract for a year, that by the end of that year, you deliver X, Y, and Z outputs. And I think that's a great way of doing it, because then it doesn't become a kind of just a stopgap until they get somebody permanent. And that's my worry about a fractional exec, to be honest, is that it's just a stopgap until they can go out and get somebody cheaper at a permanent rate. Because half the time, people are looking at, they know they need somebody to manage their IT, but what they don't know is what that person's going to be delivering. And it's a real worry of mine, especially as you said earlier on in the call in this recording, about the sector's almost at a crossroads, isn't it? There's so much that needs fixed, whether it's damp and mold data, whether it's compliance. There's so many systems out there, so many.
There are, and I'll challenge any exec team. There will be the odd couple where everyone in that exec team holds each other in the highest regard. Think that they have a complete set of skills that they need. There will be other exec teams there that are almost tearing each other apart. They have very different views and very different priorities, and culture change is a massive issue in this sector at the moment. It has to be, there has to be a method for overcoming it. And the nice idea of a fractional exec as well is it can help to overcome that culture change. An important part of it is it's not designed to be there forever. It's designed to come in, provide a goal, achieve a goal, but in doing so, and this is hugely important, mentor others so that after they've gone, it continues.
Really good point.
I get very excited about this whole concept because for me, yes, there are things you can point at it and say, but this, but it's a massive opportunity. You and I, okay, we're here, we're employed within the social housing sector. We need to pay our mortgages and things, but now what there is just so much opportunity here to look back at a later date and say there was a legacy there. We didn't just do a job, we really made a difference. And this is why I get so excited about concepts like fractional exec. Now let me throw in another one for you.
Go for it.
I was yesterday, putting a lot of thought into this, and I was yesterday talking to an expert in funding.
Okay.
Now, as we're probably aware, everyone in the sector is probably aware of it, there are opportunities where there is good causes to actually have, or philanthropic, is that the word? But there are huge funds of money that are available to go and do good things.
Yeah.
This sector is very poor at taking advantage of that. There are lots of examples of where it has, but in the great scheme of things, few and far between. So what if the fractional exec could also be funded? Free money. So you are going to achieve a goal. Maybe it is, whatever it generally has to have some form of well-being fit to it.
Yeah.
So it could be digital exclusion. It could be health and safety related. It could be something that is going to improve the lives of tenants and customers. What if that could be financed almost? So actually, it when you get to the end of the year,
there's no reason why it couldn't be, is there? I mean,
there is no reason, Dave. There is absolutely no reason.
I know. I totally agree with you. There's a great company. I don't know if you remember John McLaren at iDocs. It's a bit of a plug there, but they do a lot of funding and grants and find grants for landlords, etc., on areas like that. And the amount of times over the last couple of years I've worked with companies that said, you can get this funded, and they go, what? So it's true.
Another plug, although it's kind of one of our competitors, is Oaks. That's what they do.
But the point is, Colin, there's people out there that will find you grants, funding, whatever it may be. If it's, I think the words I always use is for the social good. We're at that point where, if I'm totally blunt about this, I think a lot of landlords are failing their tenants, their customers, right? And I'm not going to say it's a couple. I think there's quite a few out there that could do better, whether it's areas specific to compliance, or whether it's customer service, whatever. And I don't care if somebody comes back to me and says, "Oh, it's not right you say that, Dave." Well, I think it is, because at the end of the day,
we could all do better, Dave.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think you have to be honest with yourself to say, this is what we need to do. And if you can evidence that this is for the greater social good for your tenants, the ones that are struggling, whether it's cost of living, whether it's arrears, whether it's a hotspot of ASB, whether it's compliance, damp, mold, gas safety, all of these things are needing addressed. One of the things that I wanted to kind of get your view on, Colin, on the fractional exec specifically, was how do you then, so what we know that happens in a landlord is they turn around and say, right, we think this is a good idea. But then I've always found that the difficulty with a landlord is all how they justify it to their management team and their board, and how they somebody will write a business case, no doubt. I've seen millions of them over my time, and I used to work in a landlord. I've written many business cases to get this system or to get that initiative going. So how do people, how do they get it into their thinking that the fractional exec's right? Because we obviously truly believe in it, and there's many other folk think it's a good idea. But how do we convince the sector that this is a real good, serious option? No doubt you'll talk about, I think your 3C are going to CIH, and yeah, so you'll talk about it there, and that'll be a good insight for folk. But I think it's something that needs almost driven a little bit more in the sector.
I was talking to a chief exec I have high regard for, of a significant social housing provider in Scotland yesterday morning, and I'm sure it's a problem shared by a great many chief execs that they have their exec meetings and a deadline is moved back again. And then again, and then again, and they start scratching their head. What can they do to change it? Often it's a cultural challenge as well that they're dealing with. But how many times can a chief exec allow a deadline to be moved again and again and again before they turn around and say, look, we have a strategic imperative here to make a difference, and we've set these goals out, right? We're going to need some support now. I'll come back to it. If that could be funded, even, and this will be another change to it, Dave, potentially, that funding, you only pay for the funding if you get it.
That's right.
Generally what happens is you pay these people in advance to help you get the funding.
That's
what if you only pay for it if you get it? But anyway, that's another thing.
I think that's a good point, and I think we need to engage with this more. I would just look at engage, sorry, at the back there. I've seen you've got your background, engage, empower. I stole a word from your slogan. Colin, I think like you and I have chats all the time, and we could talk forever on some of these things. But what I'm trying to do with the Shackcast is keep them to at least under half an hour. So
Fine.
I think I'm going to. I really enjoyed that, and I think it's a topic that hopefully folk, when they tune in, the hundreds of thousands of folk that watch this Shackcast, Colin, will say, "Hey, these guys have hit upon, especially you, who delivering the service, have hit upon something strong here." So best of luck with it, Colin. I think it's a really good thing that the sector needs to get talent, whether it's top talent, C-suite staff or not. But I think we need to do better. So, Colin, thanks for your time today.
And thanks for the Shackcast, Dave.
No problem. I'm going to have to get. I'm I'm absolutely melting here. So thanks for now, Colin.
All right. All the best.